speak. This is Embodied Cognition in Dark Times by Lee Wilson out of Amsterdam, and this is in the Journal of Philosophy of Emotion from 2024. As always, it's my first time reading it. I'm going to try to explain as best I can, and feel free to ask questions along the way, and I do not endorse this work. They may say terrible things, I don't know. But, F. Descartes? What's wrong with Descartes? Oh yeah, you hate your Descartes, I forgot. Dojo hates Descartes. That's okay. But like, yeah, well, we will find out what's going on here, and here we go. Michelle Mays and Robert Hanna's The Mind-Body Politic from 2019 ambitiously sets out to combine both the philosophy of essentially embodied minds, EEM, and emancipatory political theory, EPT, in order to put forth a new critique of contemporary social institutions, as well as a concrete positive proposals for radically changing both these social institutions and our essentially embodied lives for the better. Yeah. So that's actually Dojo is like bringing up Descartes will be mentioned here. Embodied cognition is actually sort of an alternative to the Cartesian mind-body dualism. So if anyone doesn't know what embodied cognition is, it's really saying that our cognition is really more about how we interact with the world through our bodies. And it's not a question of like mind and body separate. It's that our cognition is in, sort of like, the whole thing is like, okay, so here's my glass of water. I grasp it. What is it to grasp something like a glass of water? Well, that requires hands. And so our actual understanding of what it is to grasp requires the use of hands. And so it's not like a mind-body split. It is actually in the use of hands holding on to glasses of water that we understand things. Yeah. Thank you, Josh, for gifting to Rocco. Okay, bars. I don't like substance dualism much at all. Yeah. So this is one of the strategies that starts to break down the mind-body split. Mind is a type of physical system. Yeah, but again, it's sort of like trying to separate out the brain. It's more that it's the body, okay? It's whatever you like, the mind or the brain. It's not just what's going on in your head. It's what's going on in your full system. And that's how we understand the world. So it's like the physical interactions we have matter for our mentality. Okay, so there is much to admire in the way in which MBP, that's the Mind-Body Politic, that's these two people's book, articulates the coupling of EEM and EPT, and thereafter detailing how neoliberalism affects the lives of people for worse, specifically in its expression in Anglo-European institutions of higher education and mental health practices. Schism says, there is no split, we are a body. Yep, sure. So, yeah. Like, did you put it in Discord, Vipers? Let's see. It's here yet. If you put in Discord, you can actually put Discord links in chat. So you can actually let the people know what your chat GPT stuff was. DMing? Okay. Like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, just feel free to put the link in chat. You can do it if you want. Yeah, and if you put it in the Discord, the link will actually just show up. It's good for like 2 days when you put a new link in Discord. Oh, dagnabbit, you're right, Valpo. How you doing? I forgot to do that. I need to not forget to do that. That does matter in the background setup of this. So there you go. This is Embodied Cognition in Dark Times, but yeah. And how you doing, Valpo? Hope you're having a good day. Okay, so let's see what the author is going to do. However, the author argues that there remain an explanatory gap between the general normative foundations of their approach in EEM and the particular critiques and the alternatives presented. Specifically, EEM normativity faces a political analog of the dark room problem in what the book calls computational inactivism. And if this is not addressed, EEM may well support totalitarian institutions, as theorized by Hannah Arendt, which has been the general motivation for post-World War II Anglo-European political theory, and has otherwise assumed to be incompatible with the book in the norms in this book. Consequently, EEM normativity would not only be insufficient, but unnecessary for EPT. So the EPT is the emancipatory political theory. So the idea that we'd actually have a good government won't work if you're trying to deal with this theory. Okay, so yeah. Okay, yeah, then don't. Vipers. Better to be safe. There is no good reason to dox oneself. Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, it's a bit more complicated. Yeah, because you had posted the images a while ago. But there's more to it now. Okay. Yeah. Wednesday's your 3-hour night class. Just got home. 3-hour night classes. I used to like them, but like it is so tiring to do a 3-hour night class. Like it just is. Like you were up all day, and then you have to like do all the work at night, and you're just like drained. I mean, you want to know why I liked it when I was a student? Because the teacher would get tired, and it would always be 2.5 hours. Schism says, if you have no body, then you can't have a concept of having a body. That's actually kind of hard question, because I don't even know what it would be like to not have a body. So like the idea I can imagine not having a body is kind of hard for me to do. So it's like imagining something impossible and then asking how I feel about it. Now, you can imagine your body changing. Like I can imagine like losing an arm or something. And like, can I imagine having my arm? Well, it's like, yeah, I remember what it was like to have my hand and I lost my hand. That happens. So it's like, I don't know if you can do it. Like like I find that really hard to answer, Schism. First time teaching research methods. Interesting. I hope it's going well. What's it like to be a bat? It's kind of like this beetle I have. Yeah. So K-Pars is hitting sort of the animals we love to talk about with respect to this. Yeah, I don't know, but that's kind of part of the issue here, is that we are embodied things. We have bodies. And so if you think that we're just sort of like brains in vats, yeah, but we still are thought to have bodies even as brains in vats. And so that's part of the issue is that how do you actually think of yourself as a brain in the vat if you don't think of yourself as having a at least fake body like the Matrix? The whatever that was called. Shit, I can't remember the term they used then. Like the residual image of your body. The residual image, they called it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, the overall project of MVP is premised on the enactive transformative principle, quote, enacting salient or even radical changes in the structure and complex dynamics of a social institution produces corresponding salient or even radical changes in the structure and complex dynamics of essentially embodied minds of the people belonging to, participating in, or falling under the jurisdiction of that institution, thereby fundamentally affecting their lives for worse or better. I mean, end quote. This makes sense in a very abstract sense. Like, if you live in the United States of America, as I do, you are going to interact with your government and the institutions in certain ways. If you live in a place, say, that has health care, then you are going to interact with your government and those institutions differently. Now, I'm not saying your healthcare is good or bad, but you're going to be interacting with your government and those institutions in a different way than you do in the United States, where healthcare is a pain in the fucking ass. So, but that's it. So if you think about a government changing to go from like shitty ass healthcare to like good healthcare, things are going to be different. Yeah. The brain has to exist. I think therefore my brain of that. Yeah. Well, does the brain have to exist? Can you just be some sort of something else? I don't know. But that's the whole problem here. It's hard to even make sense of it. Rocco files a sensory deprivation was an attempt to remove all sensations if we didn't have a body, but isn't thinking itself grounded in your brain. Yeah, so that's part of the issue, is that you can remove all the sensations you can think of, but you're still going to have feedback from your body. Your body, like every movement you make, you're still going to get like, you know, bodily feedback a bit of some sort. And so that's part of the issue here, is that like something else is going to happen. And you can't get rid of it all. Like, you're not going to. But like, that doesn't mean body sensory deprivation isn't an interesting thing. It's just that you're not going to be able to eliminate the having a body at all. Like, just won't. Okay. Author continues, that is, social institutions are problematic or well-functioning inasmuch as they affect salient or radical changes in the structure and dynamics of individuals under such institutions for a worse or better, and the theories they have is meant to offer an account of such effects and changes the relationship between the two, as well as how the lives of such individuals are therewith worse or better. That is, the EPT critique of neoliberalism set out in the book is meant to be grounded in the EEM norms, whatever the norms are, on the basis of which such lives are determined to be worse or better. Yeah. So again, you can have a better government, you can have a worse government, but the kind of life you live is going to be dependent on whatever government you have. And even if they're not like better or worse, just different, you're going to live different lives under different stuff. Read Luigi? Yes. Viper says they have a new pilot program for Medicare where treatments are determined by AI and the AI company is paid from the money saved by their denials. Yeah. Welcome to the hellscape that is U.S. healthcare, where it's like, okay, they were screaming about death panels forever, and now they can slap the AI sticker on it, and once the AI sticker slapped on it, they're like, oh, it's not you've just got, it's okay that it's a death panel because it's the AI. It's fucking insane. Nothingness is what you see out of the back of your head. Yeah, smoky. Feel very French. I think they're probably terrified that there's just going to be jury nullification. Like the jury is just going to refuse to charge them. The case where a guy threw a sandwich at the federal, like some force in like DC. Like he was, like they arrested him for assault, like with a deadly weapon or something. And the grand jury is what he got there. So I'm sure hitting someone with a sandwich could be classified as assault under our current laws. That's not a question, I don't think. But they refuse to even charge them, like, let it go to trial. So the idea that, like, they're going to, that they're not even, like, the people in DC wouldn't even let that go to trial. It's like, yeah, people are completely fed up with the bullshit. And so, like, that guy did clearly, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, assault somebody with a, sandwich. That's not really, in the grand scheme of things, like hitting someone with a sandwich is not that bad, but like it would classify as a crime here in the US. But like they couldn't even convict him of like hitting a guy. So it's like, I'm thinking most people are just gonna be like, nah, let him go. Salt and pepper salami sandwich, yeah. That's kind of the worst part of it, Dojo. That's a fucking phenomenal sandwich. It's a great sandwich. Schism says, I kind of think about nothing as being like how I felt before I was born, just nothing. Yep. Okay, so what are we to do about, like, the fact that our lives are going to be fundamentally different? And, it was just Labor Day here in the U.S.? And they were like, I'm watching TV, and, like, there's these ads, these car ads. America's for Americans, and Americans love freedom. But you see, like, that's the whole sort of zeitgeist here in America. Like, but that's what the government makes. They want people to be like, America for Americans. Assault actually has a weird definition. More about fear of experiencing violence than actual violence. Actual violence is battery. Okay, I'm sure I am wrong because I am not a lawyer. I'm sure they could have got the guy on battery because you could have actually hit the dude. He actually did hit the dude with the salami sandwich. All right. As I understand MBP's account of EEM, there are two key characteristics of the systemic processes of well-functioning organisms, in virtue of which lacks and breakdowns in such processes are intelligible. 1. Conservation. An organic system O produces the components necessary for the continuance of those same processes, and manages its own flow of matter and energy so that it can regulate and control both its own internal self-constructive processes as well as its processes of exchange with the environment. Okay, and then we got 2, adaptivity. O's regulation of its processes of exchange with the environment are sufficiently responsive to the latter, such that conservation admits of graded notions such as lacks and breakdowns, where O regulates its environmental engagement so as to best serve its needs. Yeah. Dory says, I will say I like pretty much any pizza. New York sandwiches are off the hook. Yeah, we have great sandwiches. Viper says, in the U.S., assault generally involves causing someone to fear immediate harm or offensive contact, while battery is the actual and unlawful physical contact itself. Many jurisdictions now combine these two in a single charge of assault or assault and battery. Yeah, I remember around here it was called assault and battery. Therefore, depending on the state, assault may refer to only the threat or may encompass both the threat and physical act. Yeah, so I don't know my history on that. Verbal assault and physical violence is the battery. Ah, I see, schism. Yeah, so... But like I said, they couldn't even bring him to trial because people were just like, no, go away. Along with the inactivists such as Evan Thompson and Ezekiel DePaulo, MBP understands conservation and adaptivity to occur in three modes of embodied cognition: organic self-regulation, sensory motor sensory motor coupling with the world, and intersubjective interaction. As such, MBP analyzes institutional sociopathy in terms of the lacks and breakdowns of the relevant social institutions and practices, as well as their human constituents. However, as Nathaniel Barrett points out, such normativity, even with adaptivity, is just proscriptive normativity plus fortuitous change. That is, it aims only at the restoration of an undetermined and therefore somewhat open form of identity, and by chance this restoration involves a restructuring that constitutes a favorable alteration of identity. There would thus be no internal reason for an organism or social institution that has achieved equilibrium to adapt. Yeah, so you can see here is that they have this idea that, like, okay, you have like self-regulation, but they don't have a theory of evolution. So that's kind of what's going on. Like, the embodiment is there to maintain itself, but you've got no sense of, like, growth or change or evolution, and things will have to grow and change over time. So it's very static, even though you're sort of like self-regulating and you can adapt, like over time. There's always sort of a regression to the norm. The equilibrium is supposed to be maintained here, or it doesn't really make sense. So that's part of the problem is if you're just going to use this like organismic model of like putting that on a social institution from a human, well, that's not the full story. Like, humans were evolved creatures. And so, yeah, even though any one of us may be like self-regulating to keep ourselves, in good health, overall, all of humanity is like, we're changing over time. It's what we do. We evolve. Okay, this lack of eternal reason to undergo change presents us with a political version of the dark room problem that famously plagues a sort of computational activists that centers on predictive processing and the free energy principle. If what grounds an organism's management of its own flow of matter and energy is a certain homeostasis about its experiences, then an organism would rather remain in a highly predictable and unsurprising environment such as a dark room. Yeah, so again, you're just going to want, if you're just keeping yourself at stasis, change nothing whatsoever. But again, no evolution there. Analogously, the normativity that grounds the inactive transformative principle would on its own entail that human organisms, as well as complex dynamics of their social institutions, would tend to equilibria that undergo radical changes only when encountering chance environmental changes without reason in themselves to seek such changes if equilibria is already met. And I mean, this actually makes a lot of sense. Have you dealt with big institutions? They fucking don't move at all. They don't change. They kind of suck. This is what like Byzantine government is like. It's got all these moving parts, but really all the parts do is keep it from changing at all. So it's like everything you try to do, you can't get any motion because there's always another step of something that needs to get done. And that's part of what kills institutions. Okay, one prominent response to the dark room problem is, as such, is the argument that phylogenetic and ontogenetic development of the interactions of embodied human organisms and their environment shapes action policies that are targeted at the minimization of surprisal in a way that provides reason to leave the dark room. For example, explore the environment to minimize costly prediction error. Similarly, the conservation and adaptivity can be thought to provide internal reasons for human organisms and social institutions to undergo radical changes given their respective phylogenetic and ontogenetic developments, that is, for such organisms and institutions to achieve equilibria not otherwise present, as seen in MBP's critique of neoliberal higher education institutions and mental health practices. I think this is full of shit. Maybe the author will say it. But basically, this is saying, well, there's reasons in your makeup to change, but that's just really hand-waving at, like, the past evolutionary stuff. Like, if I said, okay, like, yeah, but you're human, and, like, you might see equilibria, but really deep down, you've got evolution going on. It's like, yeah, but then why are we talking about, like, these other things? Just say, well, there's something else going on, evolution, and it's not just, like, some inherent part of you. Like, yes, we are evolved and evolution is an inherent part of us, but like, I am not embodying evolution fundamentally. I am part of evolution. So yeah. Doga says, reminds me of Cory Doctorow's speech on the process of enshittification. Yes. That's kind of what's going on here, is that once you get big enough, you don't want to change. And then you just have to enshittify your stuff to like make it worse and worse. So like the internet in some sense is turning into this dark room where there's nothing useful to look at anymore, because that just keeps it in stasis and the people in power. So that's it's a trap, exactly. So that's exactly what's going on here, is that once you get into power, you get into a state of equilibria, there's no incentive to change, and you want to keep everything as uniform as possible, because then you're just in power. But that's what a dark room is. It's a uniform like room. So that's a good point. Okay, yet as Regine Fabry observes, the dark room problem does have psychopathological expression and explanatory purpose in cases of major depressive disorders, given the depressive experiences can be associated with the specific dysfunctions of the prediction error minimization mechanism in spite of shared phylogeny and ontogeny. That is, the dark room problem might not be necessitated by conservation and adaptivity, but it would at least be possibly supported by them under certain conditions. Similarly, in what follows, I suggest that Arendt's close phenomenological attention to totalitarian institutions and how they co-opt the aforementioned three models of embodied cognition, organic self-regulation, sensory motor coupling with the world, and intersubjective interaction can be similarly supported by the norms of conservation and adaptivity, such that the inactive transformative principle would be at best insufficient as the normative basis of MBP's critiques, if not unnecessary. Yeah, so the EPT is the the goal here, the goal of like good governance. Yeah, Viper says it's that you give a really good service for free for growth, then market saturation you monetize, which causes the enshittifications. Yeah, so that's, I mean, what I was saying is like, yes, I cut off the beginning part. So once you get to the market saturation, that's the equilibrium I was talking about. So I think that's what we're getting here, is that once you get market saturation, you want to maintain that saturation, and then you start, homogenizing everything just to maintain your stuff. And yeah, then you enshittify because you need to make money. It's granted, it is a little different. Thank you, Vipers, for pointing that out, because like the initial investment to get to that point of market saturation is like an investment here, but like that's like the evolution in the background getting us to where we are. But now we're just enshittifying because we're trying to, stay in the position we're at, and we want to maintain. Okay. The specter of totalitarianism. Unlike those extreme pathological cases briefly mentioned in MBP, where the effective framing patterns become more ingrained and a minded animal gets locked into particular modes of movement and response, major depressive disorders are often characterized precisely by an adaptivity to social environments aimed at maintaining cognitive equilibrium, that is, conservation. Similarly, following Arendt's so this is from 1958, analysis in the second edition of The Origins of Totalitarianism, totalitarian institutions and their contributory God, I'm seeing an extra T in there, and there is no extra T in there. Participants are also characterized by an adaptivity to political environments aimed at maintaining cognitive equilibrium through the distinct operation of terror and ideology. While these are neither equivalent to conservation and adaptivity, nor necessitated by inactive normativity, inactive normativity nevertheless provides crucial normative support for them. Yeah, so I guess just like first pass, the idea that you're conserving stuff is that, like, that's the goal. Like, the people in power want to stay in power, and then adaptivity, you can use terror to, like, quell dissent. So anytime something happens, you can adapt by using terror to, put down any opposition. Okay, the norm of conservation would support totalitarian institutions in the operation of terror, which involves the totalitarian state's identification of its laws with the supposed laws of an unfolding, putative history of nature, aimed at fabricating humanity as transhistorical, super-organic singularity. Your words, not mine? Yeah, that's right. I'm making stuff up as per usual. Unlike the authoritarianism specifically criticized in the book, MBP, which stabilizes the complex dynamics of social institutions by curbing radical change with positive coercive laws, totalitarian terror's stabilization of such dynamics is carried out by eradicating those very laws that individuate and simultaneously relate human beings as individuals to each other. While, say, authoritarian property laws may coercively limit the human organism's environment, such individuals can nevertheless retain their unique manifestations of those various modes of embodied cognition within those limits, yet under totalitarianism, all property is at the disposal of the state. Yeah, so all of a sudden, you can still interact in the way you thought you normally could, but it's ultimately they can take it away from you. Oh, is it a reference to terrorizing people? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we terrorize anyone. I'm saying this is how authoritarian states, quash dissent, is that they terrorize people. I mean, that I'm not endorsing that. Yeah, so Vipers has experience in such things. He knows a little bit. He's got some experience in this area. So the laws of totalitarian terror function to relate individuals by de-individuating them into mere specimen, merging human plurality into a single putative humanity. From the internal point of view of a totalitarian system, non-conforming individuals are to be removed by coercive mechanisms as disequilibrants. Disequilibrants? Yeah, so you take out the squeaky wheel. That's what they're saying here. The squeaky wheel in the terror thing is like you get disappeared or dead or whatever it is. So you're the one that is like rocking the boat and they come after you. Yeah, my voice is going. New words to relate to. Yeah, well, welcome to philosophy where people make up words all the fucking time and it's fucking annoying. I've made up new phrases before in philosophy, but I don't think I've made up any new words yet. Maybe one day. Okay, in this way, intersubjective interaction, which relies on the participatory sense-making of unique organisms and whose uniqueness are precisely a function of such sense-making, would be reduced to how parts of a singular body politic relate to each other for the sake of conserving that body politic, and the regulation of the systemic processes of such specimens are thereby taken over and equilibrated by the teleological aim of producing the overarching superorganism. That is, intersubjective interaction would be phenomenologically conflated with a sensory motor coupling with the world aimed at collectively producing artifacts of a putative humanity. Alright, so there was a ton of really big words here, but all they're saying is that the population is all homogenized. It's all treated the same in order to serve the state, the authoritarian state, and anyone who steps out of line is in trouble. That's all. Yeah, Rockefeller says, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Exactly. Douglas says, fear sells. Fear of responsibility is one of the destructive. Yeah, so, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of very big words and complicated sentences here, but that's basically it. It's like, you're in an authoritarian state, no particular individual actually matters. You only matter insofar as the humanity is required to keep the state running. Okay, so conservation is thereby normatively crucial since the relevant regulation and control is understood as being performed by the superorganism itself. Yeah, so the humanity is maintaining the authoritarian state. Hope for emancipatory politics is lost without the possibility of individual human organisms disclosing themselves to each other as unique sense makers in the intersubjective mode of embodied cognition. Yeah, so if you don't get to have opinions, that's basically it says. The only opinion you get to have is that the state is good, but you can't disclose yourself. You can't make up some new way of interacting with other people in an authoritarian state. The co-opting of intersubjective interaction prevents a who from emerging, as relations between human beings under totalitarian conditions are mediated by the laws of a putative history or nature, reducing every being to a mere specimen, a what, and confining a sense-making between individuals to continuing the process of producing and maintaining a putative humanity. Yeah, so the humanity that's serving the state, as you say, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Intersubjective interaction under non-totalitarian contexts, on the other hand, consists in an interrelational network of individuals that manifest to each other in speech and action, under which organisms act and make sense of themselves with reference to the particular demands governing the activity, which issue from the founding event wherein the sense-making network is initially formed by a plurality of individuals relating to each other on the basis of self-sense making undetermined by sensory, motor, or organic self-relation demands. Yeah, so again, if you don't have to worry about the state, then you get to interact with the people you want to interact with. And so, like, it's real, like, there was a nasty fucking long sentence, but basically it's Twitch chat. You get to organize and say what you want in Twitch chat as you want. Granted, we have to deal with TOS and the laws of our, like, respective nations about what you say, but you do get to, as long as you're not inciting violence or whatever here, or like showing porn, like, you get to talk about whatever you want. So yeah. Period. Hence, such organisms are obliged by freedom rather than power or persuasion. The internal stability of this intersubjective network is a result of the persistence of the materiality and organization of speech and action in the exchange of these self-presentations, maintained by feedback loops of participatory sense making. So yeah, again, this is like, how does Twitch work? Well, chat. Everyone has a personality in chat, and you get to organize what you like to talk about. And between me, the streamer, we set this up. Like, it's not a crazy thing here. Just says a lot. Rocco Fowle says, people get treated solely as means rather than end in themselves, people as a commodity. Yeah. Well, it's not even like there are even individuals as part of the point here, is that they're saying the humanity is really the thing. And so, yeah, it's all of humanity. It's not even like individuals aren't even the commodity. The whole thing, is it? Dogan says, no offense, but it's the worst paper you've ever presented. You haven't been around long enough. This is definitely not the worst paper, but like, yeah, it may not be the best. It's probably not the best. Yeah, the writing here is painful. I mean, we have the joke is the Internet 2015. Someone actually referenced Wikipedia and then just put as the reference, like, they said something from Wikipedia and then they just said, like, Internet 2015. So yeah, it was unbelievably terrible. There's always worse, Schism, but like, there are specific papers that we can point to that were ungodly bad. Like, this one at least has, like, you may not like it, but like, I understand what's going on here. This may not be for you, but like, this is not crazy. We've read fucking madness from like AI madness. It's terrible. Yeah. Okay. Norms that govern intersubjective interaction, for example, the laws governing a non-totalitarian state, have their relevant normativity inasmuch as they are, 1, justified by the participation of the individual actors, sans coercion and persuasion, within the relevant institution and practices. They follow TOS, that's all it's saying. 2, relate one back to the founding event of those institutions and practices. Yeah, so it relates back to Twitch being a live streaming platform. And 3, are seen as encoding the testimony of those who witnessed, created, and subsequently augmented the founding events and standards of models. Yeah, and so now we have a community here, and this is what we do. You are all the witnesses to the community in participating in it. Viper says, I think the author is Dutch, so not his first language. Yeah, so I am getting the feel that this may be a little bit translated. So yeah. Okay. At the same time, adaptivity would support totalitarian institutions in the operation of ideology, the logic of an idea, which involves the totalitarian state's identification of the development of an idea with the movement of history and nature. Such a development is thought of as the consequence of the idea itself and needs no outside factor to set it into motion, being able to explain every historical and natural event as the unfolding of its own dialectic. This extremely plastic and responsive process, which is more fundamental a concern for the totalitarian state than the particular idea itself, Aryanism for Nazi Germany or Bolshevism for Stalinist Russia, is achieved by the application of a dialectical logic to every idea, such that each idea is transformed into a premise. This result in environmental entities This results in environmental entities always already being understood and experienced as merely resources to be utilized or obstacles to be overcome for ends external to them. That is, for the ends of the totalitarian system, whenever necessary. Yeah, and so you are all tools of the state at this point. That's what it is. And the way you become tools of the state is that they apply some sort of general idea, like how are you fitting into this Bolshevik ideal? How are you fitting into this Aryanism for Nazi Germany? And that's how you become part of the greater humanity in this ridiculous scheme that they have. Okay. That is the unique sense-making of an individual's human organism's sensory-motor coupling with the world, which involves the transformation of environmental entities into corollary artifacts, and whose uniqueness or function of sense-making would be operating alongside terror, reduced to how such products are merely to be consumed in the superorganic self-regulation of the totalitarian system. Yeah, I mean, this is driving me a little nuts. I feel like they could have said this way better. There's all this sensory motor coupling to the world. It's like, yeah, there's people interacting with their like institutions. That's all this is. Sensory motor coupling, my butt. Okay. So again, adaptivity is thereby normatively crucial for the totalitarian system's response to environmental changes and foreclosing the possibility of responses that would result in the radical restructuring of those human organisms and institutions of a totalitarian state. The co-opting of sensory motor coupling with the world prevents the organism from developing a unique coupling with its environment, inasmuch as it extends the same necessity governing any organism's production in organic self-regulation, insensitive to its unique position in concrete environment. Yeah, so it's going to fuck up your life. That's what it does. Wow, okay. Sensory motor coupling with the world. Stop with the sensory motor coupling with the world. No, it's just interacting with your fucking government. That's all this is. Interacting with your government under non-totalitarian context, on the other hand, involves an interrelated network of transformed environmental artifacts and participants under which human beings act and make sense of themselves with specific reference to the demands governing the activity that themselves issue from the overarching organization of such a network. Yes, this is TOS and the fucking laws. That's all we're talking about here. Dojo says this is far more descriptive of capitalism than an authoritarian state. Dojo, I actually don't think that they are against that description. They, I bet, are well aware that they could be describing capitalism here too. I mean, remember the title. This is Embodied Condition in Dark Times. I suspect they know, like, that is part of what's going on in the background here, is that they are also critiquing modern capitalist systems in writing this paper. Schism says, superorganic sensory motor coupling, hive mind feel thing, hive mind react. Yes. I mean, and they're using big words and it's annoying. And like they're trying to make it sound fancy. I don't see why they're doing this, but like, you know, this may just be how people in this area talk. It's not my area, but I don't see it as saying anything crazy either, which it's like they're not saying anything crazy. Like, I understand what's going on. It's like, okay, yeah, you're under an authoritarian state. It's oppressive. You have to change the way you live because it's oppressive. Yeah, and because you're oppressed, you don't get to do what you want. No shit, Sherlock. Okay. The internal stability of the sensory motor network is a result of the persistence of the materiality and organization of the environmental network, which are maintained by feedback loops between activities of the organism and their corresponding environmental artifacts. Yeah, and the institutions set up to support themselves in the fucking authoritarian state, or capitalist state for that matter. The norms that govern such a world, for example, the norms governing building construction, such as always ensure a firm foundation with wooden beams, then would have the relevant normativity inasmuch as they are 1. Justified by the demands of the particular activity, for example, to support heavy bricks, 2. Relate participating human organisms back to the initiation of the cooperative activity, for example, in terms of motivating and goal orientation, like the formation of the construction company, and 3. Can be seen as standards and models and code the initiation of the cooperative activity, even if augmented by recognized representative of the cooperative. For example, always ensure a firm foundation with steel beams. Yeah, I agree, Vipers. Like, I was so happy when I saw we were at the conclusion. So, yeah, like, I don't, like, I'll say this later also in the conclusion. I agree with what they're saying here, but they spent a lot of painful time saying it. Is this construction or cult 101? That's part of the issue here, Schism, is that this is the way, like, they're analyzing authoritarian states and how the institutions in authoritarian states can be used to, like, maintain the authoritarian state. That's a known thing. Now, discussing that, that's fine. But it's like, what are they adding? I mean, I don't know the area, so I don't know how much they're adding, but it's sure taking a long time to say it. Each mode of embodied cognition has its own kind of norms irreducible to each other. Like, this is not a fucking necessary thing to say in this paper. It's like, yeah, so people do different shit. Okay, but they want to, like, hand wave at this. Each mode of embodied cognition has its own kind of norms irreducible to each other, and importantly, irreducible to the autopoietic biological ones, just as the modes are themselves irreducible to the other. Yeah, people are complicated. Okay, what the fuck? Who cares? The worry here, to summarize, is that grounding politics on EM's norms of conservation and adaptivity phenomenologically conflate sensory motor coupling with the world, with organic self-regulation, and also transitively with intersubjective interaction with organic self-regulation. As Arendt would underscore, it is precisely because the normativity of the intersubjective and sensory motor modes of embodied cognition are distinct from organic normativity that the former's norms are experienced as norms of political and practical freedoms, respectively. The totalitarian operations of terror and ideology are precisely achieved through an understanding of intersubjective interaction and sensory motor coupling with the world as grounded in the norms of conservation and adaptivity, such as failures of the latter two modes of cognition are mistakenly understood as failures of organic self-regulation. Given enactive normativity, there can be no internal reason for a totalitarian system, as well as those given to totalitarian modes of cognition, to change, to leave the dark room of politics, as it were. EPT as such cannot be dependent on this EEM theory. Lumen says, I feel like sensory motor coupling is about saying, like, thinking about the world in a way that wants to avoid language that is not mind-body dualist. Yeah, that's fair, but that's fucking stupid also. Because, I mean, they just said it right here that, what were they saying? They've got, like, this internal reason. Like, they do have internal reason right here, as they just said. Like, yeah, it's like they might be, but it's just so dumb. It's like, why? Doggio says, are they proposing a solution? Is it anarchy, ham-fisted, ignoring all subtlety? You missed the first half of the paper. No, don't worry about it. They're not proposing a solution. They're showing that someone else's account would equally support totalitarianism. And they're doing it in a convoluted way. But like what they did was they showed basically that all the totalitarian norms would be equally supported by what they said, the person they're criticizing said would support, like, you know, good norms. So it's it's basically a purely negative paper, which is fine in terms of like who they're criticizing, but they're saying you're not going to solve the problem of totalitarianism using these sorts of thoughts. Yeah, Lumens, I think that's exactly what's going on. They're in this area of actor network theory, and they're trying to use that lingo, but for anyone not in the actor network theory, it's just a waste of time. Viper says, I imagine that the author Lee Wilson is actually an Anglophone who spent hours crafting those long, complex sentences, who finds this and everyone's like, I don't think this motherfucker speaks English. Well, Vipers, what Luminen said, I think, is actually correct. There's something called actor network theory, and this is what those people sound like. It's stupid. I think you can just say what you want to say a lot easier and be like, okay. And what I mean by like these simple words is not like the old mind by dualist. You just got to set up a definition once and say it. But like, I think it's this could be an Anglophone, but they're really steeped in this sort of like lingo. It happens. Okay, and Schism says, I think they need to go more into the whole fear thing, considering it's a primary driver of embodied cognition. Maybe, you know, like, I don't know what to do about this. Like, I'm not like angry with their argument. I just think they could have done it without saying all these big words. Okay. In the foregoing, the author has argued that the EM norms presented in that paper or the book are at least insufficient, if not unnecessary, for the particular kind of EPT critiques it hopes to mount against neoliberal institutions and a fortiori for its characterization of non-sociopathic institutions. Given that EM normativity is just proscriptive normativity plus fortuitous change, and that this can be in principle co-opted to support totalitarian institutions, a possible alternative to neoliberal disequilibria might well be a totalitarian equilibrium. Further attention to this possibility may perhaps also contribute to understanding the appeal of neo-fascist movements as recent responses to the failures of neoliberalism, as latter otherwise articulated by MBP in admirable detail. See, now we're getting somewhere. They did actually say, look, what these people thought was actually explaining the right way to go shows that it could also explain how we move from neoliberalism to fascism. And now maybe that's exactly what happened, where we've got like the fascist movements are now actually using these sorts of like equilibria strategies to co-opt neoliberal failures. Okay, the present exploration of an alternative totalitarian pathway that EM might lead us politically would be best understood as a friendly invitation for further elaboration on the normative basis of MBP's critiques of and proposed alternatives to neoliberal institutions. Yeah, see, this would be interesting. It's like, okay, someone was criticizing neoliberal institutions and giving some suggestions. Maybe those need to be fixed because they were actually good, but you need to fix them because we're just getting fascism again. But such an elaboration, importantly, should also account for why the philosophical-political clarion call of the enactive transformative principle should be sounded through particularly Anglo-European instruments, while purportedly resulting in characterizations for any non-sociopathic institution. Many Confucian political theorists, for example, understand the pathology of neoliberal institutions in terms of the lack of demophilic leadership, while Confucian theorists of well-being dispute the centrality of autonomy to the well-functioning of human beings and institutions and the realization of humanity. What the flying fuck? Why are we getting like Confucian theory in right here? What does this like? I don't have any idea what's going on with that. It's just like, let's go just like throw in like some other theory. Okay. That is, care should also be taken to avoid the danger of mistaking the needs of a specifically Anglo-European expression of the human organization or of the human organism with that of universal human needs. Otherwise, this would thereby again conflate the political with the biological and foreclose the possibility of radically changing Anglo-European institutions and practices themselves, giving us no reason to leave the dark room of Western bourgeois ideology. Yeah, and so again, as I was saying earlier, that I was pretty sure these people were, anti-capitalist. So the dark room of Western bourgeois ideology is like, yeah, it's this implicit critique of how capitalism is also going fascist. For, as Sylvia Wynter warns, quote, as long as you accept that man is a biological being, the bourgeoisie always wins because this is its description. End quote. Okay, so that was one of the papers of all time. But as always, we get to review now. So if you're in chat, let me know how you felt about this. I'm not going to hide that I was kind of annoyed with what was going on here. They were saying a lot of shit, and I don't think a lot of it mattered. But, yeah. Luminance says, lol, sometimes when I see that, I was like, I wonder if reviewer 2 was like, why don't you talk about Confucianism? And they were like, yeah, here's a line. That's fair. Maybe they had a shitty reviewer that was like, you need alternative perspectives. And they're like, fine, let me throw some Confucianism on this shit. Like, yeah. So, it's too bad. I feel like this is, if they were, a bit more focused on what they were trying to say, it was just like, look, this description of politics isn't going to work because it also supports fascist ideology, and they just like hammered that point fast and hard. It would be a lot better, but instead they did this long, drawn out, boring bullshit that's just like, and they steeped in a lot of jargon. So it's like, yeah, and that it's like, why are you going to jargon up a it's only 8 pages, and it's not even 8 pages to tell you the truth. Like there's a full like dead page here, basically, for these notes. So it's like 7 pages, and then it's a page of that, but also the first page. Okay, yeah. So it's like it's less than that. Schism says people are different. People stop being different, and the system will work. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, we've got a K-Pars gave it a navel gazing vibe. Oh yeah, if anyone is new here, use the emotes. I'm sorry. In chat, you can see them below me. But if you thought this was fun, give some fun ideas, made your brain dance, give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do count. Nog scream for existential artistic drama. There were some existential comments here. Nog oral for ancient or deeper ancient ideas. Nog knife for slicing and dicing arguments. Nog navel for navel gazing only for academics. Nog turd all style no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog grapes for big claims that shrivel up. Also, vote yay. The global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch can be used, and my vote meh. Note that anything in the green will make an overall score go up because I calculate an overall score. Anything in the red will make the overall score go down, and the vote may actually pushes everything to the middle. So yeah, so I mean I'm with Chad on this one. This was a lot, like this was bad in my opinion. You're gonna get like yeah, we're gonna do some Nog navels on this. We're gonna do both the Nog turd because they were steeped in the I can't even spell. I'm losing my brain. Nog turd. Because they were steeped in the jargon and they didn't really get very far. So it's like, I'm not like entirely, I think they actually made their shitty argument. So they're just going to get a bunch of turds. But like, they're not going to get a grapes from me. Maybe, they can get a Nog scream to, because that's what they were talking about. They didn't do a terrible job on talking about like how we should organize ourselves politically. But, yeah, it was bad. Like it's just one that was like it actually said something, but like it just said it so poorly, in my opinion. But yeah, if anyone else wants to get their views in, it's like I can appreciate you might say vote meh, vote nay. Yeah, you could have liked this too. Viper says having meticulously ascertained the precise concatenation of vexatious stimuli and the particular susceptibilities of your cognitive and emotional apparatus, I am now equipped with the perspicacious faculties requisite to systematically and inexorably engender a state of profound disquietude and irascible perturbation within your otherwise placid and equanimous constitution. Yes. Luminous is angry. Kind of liked it, kind of hated it. Yeah. So, I hate it because it could have been good. I wouldn't hate it if it was just purely bad. If it was purely bad, it would have just been like, it was just bad. It could have been good, though. Schisms, thank you for rating. You got a scream and a turd. Yeah,